What is up, guys? It is the Scarlet Duelist back again, recording another video for you other than my updated profile. This will not be about the profile, but more about my thoughts and breakdowns of how the Indianapolis Regional went. So if you're not interested in my overall takeaways and you want to move on to matchup breakdowns, skip ahead like 4 or 5 minutes. You won't offend me because I will never know. And even if I did, what can I do? So go ahead and fast forward if that's not something you're interested in. Otherwise, if you are, buckle up. So my overall thoughts on the regional are kind of as follows, not in any particular order. The first one I can think of really is 73rd of 300 isn't too shabby for such a rogue strategy that truly didn't exist at all until I put it together. I feel pretty proud of that, I won't lie. I'm not trying to seem like super duper prideful by any means, but it's pretty cool to have invented a strategy that works and is effective competitively and isn't just one of those quirky cheese strategies that you kind of see people farm YGO Pro replays for. Because it works out 1 of 20 times. This actually is a really, really competitively viable strategy that I wouldn't call anti-meta, but I just think it's flying under the radar as far as its power level and strength. Power level and strength being different because I think people assume that Invoked and Time Thief cannot get big, and they can, and strength meaning it has several strengths that make it a competitive option for a pretty low budget. So I think that's really cool, and it's really fun to play. My second thought would be that I could have done better. This is not an I would have won if comment, but I do feel as though had I not bricked the 3 times during the whole day, which is very small, by the way, but had I not bricked those couple times, they were detrimental. So I feel like that would have possibly decided the outcome of a few more matches, and I would have taken away a few more wins had those bricks not happened. But hey, they just do sometimes. Can't really change it. There's nothing that I could have done differently in that case. You just sometimes brick, and that's just the way it goes, So I would say that if had that not happened, though, I feel like I would have done better than I had. I think I would have at least had 6 wins had I not done that, because when you brick, you also delay yourself in time, which leads me to my next comment, my other takeaway, which is that time rules really change the way that you have to play, and it's not something that I anticipated being such an issue, but it really did come up more than I thought it would. I found myself rushing more than I ever thought I would, and I found that some players were not playing for their deck's overall win condition. Eventually, they did just start to try and poke for damage and stall, which I'll get into later. That was kind of frustrating to see. It didn't happen often, but I did see it, and I think, again, would have taken away a few more wins, gotten a few less, at least draws or losses, you know what I mean? It is what it is. They're playing legally by the rules for the most part anyway. I'll talk about one that I'm not so sure about, but they're playing the way they're supposed to play. It's just not something that I remembered to do. So I think, I caused my own demise there in that case. It's kind of funny that I ran out of time when I'm playing Time Thief, but that's the only comment I will make about that. You decide if it's funny. You're laughing. Yeah, I can hear you. You're laughing. I can't hear you. That would be creepy. I'm going to be done now with that bit. Next was, this is just a cool thought that I had. It wasn't even a thought, just a cool, I guess, story about something that did happen. Oh, I've got 2 cool stories. All right, the first one is that we had some professionals present at this very small regional because they're trying to get their last couple points to get their invites. And that's not a reason with why I didn't do as well. I didn't even play those guys. It was actually just really cool to see them there. I do unfortunately forget a few of their names. I'm trying to think of one of them. First name is Gabe. One of them I know was Doug Zeef, the famous Yugi tuber, who, although I don't know if he's topped or won a nationals or anything like that, he's a very talented Yu-Gi-Oh player and Yugi tuber, so he was there. And there were 2 more that I believe had topped at nationals that I cannot seem to remember their names. But they were there because I had that pointed out to me by one of my friends who does know names a little better than I do, which was pretty cool. So yeah, really interesting to see that. And finally, my last funny story actually about what happened at regionals was that my two friends that I traveled down to play with ended up playing each other, which is so unlikely, but it was hilarious. And on top of that, the cherry on top was, during their match, I was in the seat right next to them. So we all ended up at a point where we were right next to each other, which was hilarious. At least for us. It might be one of those had to be there things. If it is, I'm sorry for spamming you with it, but it was funny for us. All right, now we're going to move on to my matchup breakdowns. Why the deck succeeded, why it failed, and why it tied with certain decks. So let's begin. First one was Mystic Mine. I'm guessing you can probably figure this one out. If I didn't draw into my side deck, they were going to win, plain and simple. Or if I didn't have setup right away to chain to the activation of Mystic Mine, had I gotten my setup going first and all of that, they were going to win, plain and simple. So that's just kind of how it went. I did put in all of my side deck, which was, I believe what I sided for them was Denko, Twin Twister, and Evenly Matched. However, I did not see any of my side deck when playing them until it was too late. I drew one Denko Sekka, and I did play it, and this player did actually do something. I don't know if it was intentional, but it was a little dirty if it was. If not, honest mistake, I guess. It was my fault, though, for not calling a judge and trying to clarify the situation. He actually chained to the summon of Denko Sekka with his burn traps and then continued to win that way. Which I wasn't sure, because in my head I'm like, oh, it makes sense, I guess, to chain to the summon. But if it's been summoned, unless you can negate the summon, you actually cannot chain to Denko Sekka, which is something I should have asked a judge about, but I was like, in that, it was the first match. I have that fear of being that guy sometimes, so I didn't do it. I should have, because I could have possibly made that last a little longer and maybe even taken it, but, nerves got in the way there, and I didn't, and Mystic Mine won. So that's kind of the way that went. But, honestly, though, I don't know if I would have taken it anyway, just because if I don't draw my side deck, that's just it. They're going to stun me and win. It's the way it goes. It's why it's such a degenerate deck. But moving on. Match number 2, Prank Kids, ended in a draw because both of us just had a lot of decisions to make to get our boards and setup and what to chain to stop each other. So it just went slowly. Now this person, and if you're out there, by the way, and you watch this somehow and you're like, definitely clarify with me that you were not doing this, but I have the suspicion that they were a little bit slow playing for the simple reason that I took game 1. Game 2, I was ahead, and they looked at their cards for quite a long time with very little time left over and burned for just enough to take game 2 and make it a draw in the very last seconds, which felt a little convenient, I won't lie, because they weren't playing that slow the entire match, which is why it made me suspicious. But because slow playing is such a hard thing to prove, again, I didn't call a judge because I feel like that would have wasted more time than what was already being wasted. So, those things happen, live and learn. So that ended in a draw. Moving on to True Draco. This one was just slow. I don't think this person slow played at all. I think our plays were just, we had a lot of thinking to do. Also, he wasn't sure how to deal with my deck, so he did have to kind of scramble to come up with moves because I was interrupting him in ways that he wasn't used to being interrupted. And kind of same from me to him. I don't play against True Draco very often. So we had to think a lot. We just went slow, ended in a draw. Altergeist. That went really well just because if I could just bounce back one of their cards and keep them from activating their spells and traps with Denko Sekka, or just remove their traps, and then I evenly matched them. I did all of that with my side deck. I took it pretty easily. No offense to you, Altergeist player, if you're out there. Judging the deck, not the player. So yeah, that one went pretty well, pretty easy. Thunder Dragon Chaos Guard Dragons is the next one, which was an insane deck. Guys, it's honestly just on a whole other tier. If they get their setup first, even if I draw Sphere Mode, they're probably going to recover next turn and just game me. It's just the way it is. So Thunder Dragons is just a tough matchup, unfortunately. It's not that I couldn't beat them, because I did grind it out for a long time, but eventually they just out-resourced me, and that's just the way it went. Next was Endymion. I took this pretty easily just because I knew what to interrupt. I had researched the deck because I expected to see it more because it was so new and such a budget-friendly strategy. So that one, you really just have to interrupt and make sure they don't get enough spell counters to do anything. And then Tiamaton helped me a lot with just blocking their pendulum zones. I made sure I could do that with my setup. So again, pretty easy to take care of if you know how to play the deck. You just got to think it through. But Endymion is still a solid deck. Now, if they get their setup before I can do anything, definitely can beat me. So I just have to be strategic, hope that I go first, that kind of thing, and it tended to work out. So that's why that went well. Next was Crusadia Guard Dragons. I actually won game 1 here, but they were able to then choose to go first, and then they sided really well for me for game 3 too. So that one I just lost, and that actually ended up going into time anyway. So it was just one of those that, just went on and on and on, and then eventually time decided and they had more life points. So it's just the way it went. Again, struggled with that the whole day with not having enough time. That's just the way it goes though. Next was Cyber Dragons. This person was actually pretty checked out when I played them. They probably could have done better against me, but I think they were just having a hard day. So I took this one pretty easily just because I could get a setup that interrupted them enough that they couldn't do any of their plays. So yeah, that one was pretty simple. Then there was Subterra Guru Control. This one was tough, but what it came down to, honestly, was who got set up first. And then, of course, I had Denko Sekka, so I could stop a lot of the traps that they had set because they had some floodgates. And then if I could get rid of Guru or stop Guru or, stop any of their hand trap, like in-archetype hand trapping or anything like that, get rid of, I'm forgetting it, but their field spell. Yeah, there were lots of things I could do that interrupted, so it was just enough interruption that I could take it. So, yeah. That one was a long, grindy match, too, though. It went really well, and it was really fun to play, actually. A lot of people don't like playing against it, but both of us were kind of a control-based deck. Although mine has combos to get to my control, I would say that I'm not necessarily a combo deck, but I guess maybe I have a wrong definition of what that means. I think my overall goal is to control the field more than it is to just combo an unbreakable board, but that's just me. So, yeah, that's it, guys. Those are my matchups. Also, if you didn't watch my deck profile video yet, one change I did make to this deck from what I actually played, just so you guys have, the very best version of this deck. I already put it in the profile, but I actually, when I was playing, I saw Magical Meltdown too much, and the reason that was bad was because it often got ashed. Now, I Called by the Grave pretty often. I think I got to use Called by the Grave every single time I got ashed, but 2. But when that happened, it really did stun me from being able to do much, and I couldn't activate another Magical Meltdown. However, when I had Terraforming, I could bait out that Ash and then eventually, possibly, just activate the Meltdown that I already had or activate another Terraforming, or they wouldn't even do it if they didn't have it. So it was one of those things where I just saw it too much, and I also discovered that I don't want to draw into Magical Meltdown mid-game because I'm already recycling Alistairs, which means if I've gotten an Alistair already, the chances of me needing to search him out again are very slim, at least in how this deck plays. So I ended up cutting out Magical Meltdown from 3 to 2 with an even mix of 2 Magical Meltdown, 2 Terraforming, which is actually the same kind of number of Magical Meltdowns that I had before because I had 1 Terraforming and 3 Magical Meltdown. So you're still technically having the same amount, but 1 is not a hard once per turn, which is a lot nicer. So I think that's really it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed hearing my video. Hopefully, if you do try out the deck for yourself, you find success with it, even improve it for your own tastes. But this is the way I play it, and I feel like it did pretty well, honestly. I'm excited to improve upon it and maybe bring it to another one and try it again, because it's definitely a rogue strategy that people are not expecting. Because one minute they think, oh, you're playing Time Thieves. Okay, I know how to deal with that. And then I bring out an Invoked Makaba, and they're like, what's going on? Or an Invoked Kaliga, and they're like, oh, great. So, and then furthermore, then I stun them with a Tiamat. They had no idea what was going on, and it was awesome because it all synergizes in a way that people don't expect, which I really enjoy. So, yeah, thanks for watching. Hopefully this was insightful, helped you learn something about, how to build for your regionals or competitive events. Hopefully you gained something out of it. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe, and see you next time.